Being a ghostwriter can be a lot of fun. It's a rewarding profession. And today you're going to learn from one of the best ghostwriters of all time on what it takes to become a successful ghostwriter. Hi, I'm Dan Janal, and welcome to our podcast. I'm a book coach, developmental editor, and ghostwriter. And no matter where you are in the writing process, I can help you write your book. Today, our guest is Michael Levin, one of the most acclaimed ghostwriters in the industry today. He's written literally hundreds of books with celebrities and brand name people, some of whom he can name, some of whom he can't name. And we're going to learn all the ins and outs of the ghostwriting business from Michael today. So, well, let's get started. Welcome, Michael.
Dan, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the warm buildup. I appreciate that.
You know, you've worked with a lot of famous people. How do you gain their trust, and what do you do about confidentiality?
You know, confidentiality is easy. I keep it.
Yeah.
What else am I going to talk about? I mean, you know, if it says confidential, that's the end of it. A lot of the celebrities I work with are fine with the fact that you know, my name is on the book in a lot of cases. So there's nothing, there's no, and then in other cases, not, I don't talk about them. I don't talk about them by name. I'd love to. One of my books, one of my New York Times, I've got two New York Times best-selling books. One of them, my name is on it. The other, it's not. I'd love to tell the world because it's a real big shot, you know, whose book that is, but can't. So don't. So confidentiality is very simple. Keep it or your reputation. This is the internet era. You know, one false step and somebody will post about it, and then you're toast. So, you know, so don't do that. What was the other question? How do I deal with? So how do I earn the trust of the celebrities I work with?
Exactly. Yes.
I'll tell you a story. You can't be afraid of them, and you cannot suck up to them like, "Oh, you're so great," you know. Because everybody does that. I'll tell you something really weird. The celebrities I've worked with, this is really interesting. This is really interesting. This is even before the gray hair and the four kids. They started to see me I realized they see me as as a father figure. Where's that coming from? And then I realized that a lot of the people I work with, and it's business people as well as athletes, the reason they're so incredibly successful is that they never had a father who said, good job. And as a result, they never realized, they just don't understand, you know, how much they have to do before they can sort of like just catch their breath. So this is why most of my billionaire clients are billionaires, because they never had a father to say, good job, son, after they made 10 million. You know, they couldn't, or after they reached a certain level of success in sports. And I don't tell them, you know, you're great. They know that. This is going to sound really crazy, but I say, you know, I'm really proud of what you've accomplished. And you can just see the shoulders go down. It's like, wow, that's all I ever wanted. Because right now they're so successful, they don't know whom to trust because everybody wants a piece of them. Everybody wants to do a deal with them or sleep with them or, you know, whatever. And I'm coming along and just, I'm the dad. You know, I'm proud of you, son. And that may sound insane, but that's how they see me. They see me as an authority figure because I know about books, and books are something that, you know, are sort of mystical in our increasingly post-literate society. And then, you know, just my demeanor, I guess I just have a dad vibe, and you know, it works. But also you cannot be afraid of them, and because you have to be able to, like Dave Winfield, my literary agent at the time set me up with, he said, do you want to meet Dave Winfield? He wants a book. I'm like, of course I want. I love Dave Winfield. I used to see him play all the time. Great athlete, only athlete he's Baseball Hall of Famer. He's only athlete in history to be drafted by the NFL, the NBA, and Major League Baseball, the only one ever. So he sets us up, and we meet for lunch, and we have lunch, and we kind of hit it off because I've seen him play and I know baseball, so we have a lot to talk about. We have a really fun lunch. I mean, he's such a personable guy. So he gives, I'll keep it short. So he gives me about 100 pages to read. He says, here, take this and read it. And Dave is known as a thinker among athletes. So I take these pages back to my office and I read them and I think about it. And I think this is just not a good book. This is not going to work. So I called him 2 days later. I said, Dave, you know, I read everything you sent me, and I just don't think it's going to work this way because blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, you could do a book and the title would be this and the subtitle would be that and the chapter titles would be this and this would be the purpose, and this is the whole thing. And there's a long pause, long enough for me to contemplate how great my career might have been had I worked with Dave Winfield. And at the end of the long pause, Dave says, "That's good. I like that." And we were off and running, and that was my first national bestseller. And Dave and I have stayed friends. And then, after the situation with George Floyd, we started talking about race, which we talked about a little bit in the book, but we ended up having conversations go for literally hours. And I'd be walking around the house on my phone and talking about, and my wife would be like, "Oh, you're talking to Dave again." So you become their friends. But the thing is that you cannot be afraid of them, and you cannot sort of like want stuff from them. And if you come across as almost a parent figure, telling them how proud you are as opposed to how great they are, and if it's sincere, things can be great. So that's my speech. That was a long answer on celebrities.
Love it. That's great. How do you separate your voice from their voice? How do you capture their voice? What tips do you have for us to capture and write in their voice?
Well, it's like acting. You're not writing in their voice, you're being them. And while you're being them, you're saying things the way they do. So you have to pay attention to, and I learned this the hard way, stuff getting rejected by clients, but do they speak in long sentences? Do they speak in short sentences? What kind of adjectives do they use? Are they short and choppy in their, are they very emphatic, or are they more legato, if you will, in a musical sense? And so you just, you get into their rhythms. So I the advice is, don't write the book, instead be the client, and speak as if you were the client, as if you were on stage playing the part of the client in a show. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I've never heard it that way, but I'm imagining that and thinking that, yeah, that's the way to do it. Because I've looked at their sentence structure and the words they use and their vocabulary, and that's good. But actually, to get into the ethos of who they are by going on stage and being them, yeah, that's really cool. I
Yeah.
got to tell you one funny story though. I had one client, and he'd actually written a manual. And I took some material from the manual and put it into the book because it was really technical about lighting and microphones, whatever. There was nothing I could do to improve it. So I just copied it over. He looked it over and said, "I hate this." Like, you wrote this.
That's hysterical.
It happens all the time. What advice would you give to aspiring ghostwriters looking to enter the field?
Find a friend, do a book, find a friend who has a business, and just approach them and say, "Hey, look, I'll do a book for you, and pay me a small amount. I mean, I'll be charging 45, 75,000 one day, but I'm a good writer. I'll do it for you for $15,000. I mean, make it something, and then if it's a success, you'll pay me another 10 down the road. If it makes you $50,000, it'll make you more than that. But so and then just give me a performance bonus down the road. And as long as I can put you and the book on my website and use that in my marketing and get a blurb from you." And people are like, "That sounds pretty good." And and I want to make a suggestion that I learned in Sandler sales training. I'm a big advocate of sales training because you are in business. You may think you're an artiste and all that other stuff, and that's true. But if you don't sell, you don't eat. And and so you have to learn how to sell, and I had to learn how to sell. So I went to Sandler sales training for 2 years. It was fantastic. And one of the things they said is that we tend to sell the way we buy, meaning that if something's really expensive, I go, "Well, I'm never going to buy that. That's crazy. Why would I?" A John Lobb makes shoes that are $1,600 a pair. I would never buy a pair of John Lobb shoes. But the thing is that if I'm going to sell John Lobb shoes, if I'm going to go work in a John Lobb store, I can't sell those shoes the way I would buy them, which is to say not at all. Instead, I have to realize that for my clients, only the best will do. These are the best shoes in the world. And they're very excited to be able to afford such a well-made shoe, and it's made from this supple leather. And I have to love the shoe. And I have to, so it's the same thing with ghostwriting. You have to sell in a different manner from the way you would buy. You personally might not buy something crazy expensive. But the thing is that your clients do because they're rich. and if they aren't rich, you got the wrong clientele.
Well, I
So,
have a new business meeting this afternoon, and I'm going to put some of that into practice. So thank you. Hey, are there any emerging trends or changes in the ghostwriting industry that you've observed?
well, obviously, people talking a lot about AI, and
Mhm.
I've never used it. I never would use it. I've been asked in seminars, what do you think about AI? And my answer is that if I ever want to write a mediocre book, I'll call on AI. and in the meantime, it says on my website, it's you and I, not AI. so
Ah,
so I'd be very, very cautious about trying to save time by allowing ChatGPT to do your work for you. Because the client can just go into ChatGPT. What we can do that those things cannot do, at least not yet, is that we can listen for what the client is not really saying but wants to say, or and we can draw that. We go, whoa, wait a minute, what did you just say? I've never heard anybody in your industry talking about that. ChatGPT can't do that. And then also, um, uh, let's say, like right now, I did an interview this morning with it's a group of 5 people who are being interviewed for the book, and uh, this was the second of 3 hours on the topic of leadership. And one of them started off by saying, well, it's politically incorrect to say this about leadership, but blah, blah, blah. I'm like, whoa, I've never heard that before. And so he expanded on the idea. And I said to the team, what if we made this the focus of the chapter? Because, there are a million books on leadership. What about, using that idea as the linchpin of the chapter because it's so outrageous and no one else is saying it and it needs to be said. They're like, yeah, let's do that. So, AI cannot do that. So what I would say is be very, very cautious about I hear that it's an even better search engine than Google, and at some point I'll try it out. Um, but I'd be very, very cautious about using technology to do my work for me.
love that answer. I'm a former journalist and reporter and PR guy. So when someone says something out of the norm that just like, wait a second, alarm bells go off in my head, just like they
Yeah.
do in yours. Wait a second. That's what we should do. And they usually say, what did I say? What did I say? And I said, it's a good thing we have a transcript and we're recording this because otherwise you'd miss the exact wording and phrasing. So I find that recording things are a great way to focus on the content and not have to write every word down. Michael, as we wrap up here, what skills or qualities are crucial for success as a ghostwriter?
Empathy. You have to really love your client. Uh,
Mm.
you have to most people in my world who need books are business people, or their memoirs paid for by business people. And we are teaching our young people in colleges and universities today to despise business and business people, which is kind of wacky because everybody I know who has that sort of mentality loves their iPhone, loves their MacBook, loves their Lululemon, loves their Starbucks. Those things did not create themselves. Those are products of business. Now, I'm not saying that business is perfect or that the business world never does bad things. Of course it does. It's like anything else. But the thing is that if you're going to be successful as a ghost, you cannot carry a subconscious bias against business and against business people into your work and expect to do a good job for your business clients. And then the other thing you have to do is remember that it's their book. It's not your book. It's their book. This is not a place for your opinions. I did a book for a religious leader, and I sent it to the copy editor, and I didn't notice until much, much later that the copy editor had interjected one of her opinions, which was totally contrary to the author's perspective, into the manuscript. And I don't normally write scathing letters to people, but she got a scathing letter. How dare you? How dare you interject your opinion into my client's book? You've no business doing that. I will never use you again. And grow up. So have some respect for the fact that They believe what they believe. And if you don't subscribe to what they believe, don't do their book. You cannot cash someone's check if you disrespect them. Our former president had a series of books ghostwritten for him. And one of his ghostwriters came out during his term and said, I regret working for him. I despise the man. He's a horrible person. I'm not going to mention his name, but you all know who I'm talking about. And I was really shocked, because if you're gonna cash someone's check, have some respect. And if you don't like who he's become, keep your mouth shut. It's none of your, it's nobody's business. Protect your own dignity. I thought that person looked like a fool. I'll say something else too, and I know there's a long answer. That is that sometimes ghostwriters don't do their clients a favor by putting things into the book that the ghost should have said, you really shouldn't mention that. That's really not make you look good. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you're going to be really sorry that that's in the book. And it might be a personal matter. I'll give you a great example. Prince Harry talks about shoving his brother in the manuscript. Now, the guy who wrote that book wrote Andre Agassi's book, Open, which for my money it's like the best ghostwritten book ever. And I read that book and I thought, wow, this just lifts all the standards. You have to do books as good as Open. And if you haven't read that, you should read it. And so I read the Prince Harry book, and I read that and I thought, man, they're going to sell a lot of books with this, and it's going to get a lot of coverage, and one prince shoving the other prince. But the thing is that these guys have to spend Christmas together, not just now, but for decades, because they're young guys. And did it happen? Did it not happen? He broke his necklace. It's like it's so juvenile that yes, it's selling books in the short term, but is it really necessary? Or you look at who's the singer who just came out with a memoir, and she talks about she had an abortion after she had a relationship with some singer, and you sit there and you say, her kid is going to read that book in 15 years. Is that really necessary? So don't let your client push the book over the cliff, and try not to let your client say stuff. I can tell you some really outrageous stories along these lines, but try not to let your client say, or just point out to your client, this may have happened, it's factual, but 5-10 years from now, you and probably your spouse and your kids are going to be really sorry you put this in print. And yes, you have an obligation to say that. Do you have to die on the sword for that? Not necessarily. It's his or her book, but you do have responsibility to your client not to let them take the book in a direction that's going to be detrimental to their own reputation or self-image, or those of their loved ones down the road.
Great point. And that's certainly something that AI cannot do. So Michael, you've been an absolute delightful guest. Loved having you on the show. Tell us, who is your ideal client and how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, sure. Thank you. My website is Michael Levin Writes, Michael Levin WRITES is my website. My cell number is 617-543-3747. 617-543-3747. Operators are not standing by my phone. And I pick it up and I'll answer it, and we'll talk. And my ideal client is obviously somebody with a positive person with a positive message. And those are the folks I work with. Those are the folks I love and respect, and those are the folks whose privilege it is for me to carry their message and amplify their message to society.
Great. Thank you for being with us, and thanks everyone for listening. We have more than 200 other episodes on our YouTube channel of Write Your Book in a Flash with Dan Janal. Check them out. Thanks for being here.